shaken?
Ooh, I love that. What's shaken? That's a really fun way to ask what's going on, what's happening. Not too much
That's
over
my
here. What's
signature.
shaken over in Colorado?
Well, it's gonna snow today, I think, actually.
Oh, I'm
So
so
that'll be
jealous.
fun. Yeah, the
I'm
cool
jealous
thing
and I'm
about
not jealous. I would like to
yeah.
visit the snow, but I
Mhm.
wouldn't love to live in the snow and have to drive in the snow. It's
Oh,
nice
no,
for
no,
me
no.
as a destination.
Yes, yeah, totally. I mean, the thing about Colorado that I love is that the sun is so intense. It'll snow today, and by tomorrow afternoon, a lot of it will be melted. But on the East Coast, that's not the case. You have it all year. It doesn't go
Oh,
away.
that's ideal. You get to see it so beautiful, but then you
Yes.
don't have to drive in it so much, which is hazardous.
Exactly. That is key. That is key. So what are we getting into today? Are we talking about, oh, I love these words today that we're talking about. Really and actually? Is that right?
Yes, exactly. We had a listener write in asking. They hear them used both, and sometimes it seems like they're a direct synonym and sometimes not. So, this is a great question. And there's a lot of nuance with these words, really and actually. So, we're going to get into it today, let you guys hear how we use them, the different ones, so that, yeah, you can understand the meaning, the context when you hear them, and also use them. Use them yourself.
I love it. And these words are everywhere in English. They are everywhere. So this is going to be a really useful episode that our listeners can immediately go out and implement. Don't you think,
Yes,
Aubrey?
exactly. Yes, I definitely agree. I'm
Okay.
going to go ahead and read this question. Ready?
Oh, okay. Okay. Go for it.
Okay. Dear Lindsay and Michelle, I have doubts about the use of two words, actually and really. What is the difference between them? For me, they have exactly the same meaning, but it seems to me you use both in the podcast in different situations. I think it can be so interesting to discuss in a new episode. Congratulations for your podcast. Until now, I was never motivated to improve my English, and with your conversations, everything has changed. What a great initiative from your side, and thanks a lot. Best regards, Alba. I love
Oh
that. I love it whenever I
gosh.
hear about a student who's, wasn't that as motivated before and then found the podcast and now they love it and they're excited. They listen every day. That it just makes my day,
Oh, it makes it all worth it. I mean, that's why we
right?
podcast. That's what we love to be able to motivate you guys to love English again, right? We know that you may have learned in a classroom with a textbook and it was kind of a drag, right? But now we're doing it in a new way by focusing on connection, not perfection, Aubrey. That's what we're all about. That's what every episode comes back to. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's so true. And we have a second podcast. If you guys aren't aware, IELTS Energy. Jessica and I are over there every week. So if you're studying for IELTS or if you're looking to improve your overall English, we have the podcast for you. Right? Make sure that you're subscribed
Yeah.
both here to All Ears English and to the IELTS Energy podcast.
You got it, Aubrey. All right. So, yeah. So these are adverbs, right? So, what do we need to know about these two adverbs, Aubrey?
Yeah, they are really tricky, right? Alba is correct because the dictionary lists them as synonyms. If you look up, actually, it says the definition is really. And if you look up really, it says actually. But we
Really? Okay.
actually use them differently. They can
Quite
sometimes be
differently.
a synonym, but sometimes they have a very different meaning. So we are going to dive into it. We use both of them before an opinion, not before a fact, right? So we would say, for
Mhm.
example, what's really important is being kind to others, or what's actually interesting about the book is the style. And this is where they are more like synonyms. Both of them just mean this is our opinion, that this is what is important. But
Okay, but
then it gets a
then
little complicated, right?
okay, so
Because
tell us.
really can just mean very. We just use it to emphasize something. It's really cold today. It
Yes.
means you can't say actually in the same way. You could not say it's actually cold today. If you say that, it means something very different. It means
Okay.
that it's
Uh-huh.
surprising, not just very, right?
Surprising. Yes. Oh my gosh. So now it sounds like, Aubrey, we're going a level deeper. So the initial, if you look at both on the surface level, they can be synonyms, but then we're going a level deeper, which is very commonly the way natives actually use it. More than
Exactly.
anything, I actually think natives use actually to imply surprise the
Hmm.
most, right?
Yep. Yep. Definitely. Much more often. And it is intonation is very important here. So we're going to show you some sentences where depending on the intonation, the meaning is different. So these are
Oof.
words that there are some words in the English language where they have different meaning depending on the intonation. And These are a couple of them. So it's good
Oh
that we're
man.
highlighting them. So let's give you first a couple of sentences where, right, really just means very. Like, this is really
Hmm.
hard.
Yeah.
But
Or
then if we use
mhm,
actually in the same sentence, it implies surprise, right? This is
right.
actually hard. Very different meaning. We're indicating that it's surprising that it's hard.
Yeah, this is actually hard, right? That's the intonation that I would use. This is actually hard, right? And you're kind of
Hmm.
there's a little confusion in your voice there too,
Yes. You're
right?
surprised it's hard. You didn't expect it to be so hard. Exactly.
So many
So, but
things.
here's what's
Like,
tricky. This is what I think is the most tricky thing about these two words. And this is probably why Alba wrote in about it, because really can also imply something is surprising if you use the right intonation, right? You could say, this is really hard, right? Or
oh.
we want to talk about how we often flip the adverb and the verb. And
Hmm.
then, right, you might hear, this really is hard, which of course indicates surprise as well.
So you're iterating, right? Maybe you thought
Hmm.
it would be or didn't think it would be, but now you're emphasizing rather. You're saying this really is hard, right? I
Exactly,
love
right?
it.
So that's where the confusion
Yeah.
comes in, because if these words just had different meanings, it would be clear. And why don't they? English is so confusing. I apologize on behalf of English, you guys. It would be so much easier if
I
actually
know.
were the one that indicated surprise and really couldn't be used that way. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Depending on the
Yeah.
intonation, really can also indicate surprise, makes it a
Yeah.
little bit trickier.
I mean, I think this is where listening to a lot of native content really comes in, Aubrey. Making sure you're consuming content for native speakers, movies, TV shows. You're going to hear these a lot, these two words, actually, and really, and you're going to start to infer, okay, what's the meaning? How are they using it here versus here? And then you're going to be able to start
Exactly.
using it, right?
Yep, exactly. And then it just sounds right. You start understanding whether surprise is indicated or not because you're
Hmm.
watching TV, you're listening to podcasts. Like you said, you're listening to English made for native speakers and you're
Yes.
hearing how natives use them.
Totally. I love it. Now, did we do another episode a little while back?
Yes.
488, right? This one,
Yep, I wanted
guys,
to point
is
this out.
about,
We did a
yeah.
really deep dive into the word actually, which was a
Okay.
great episode. So check it out if you guys haven't. All Ears English 488. You can come back to the blog, allearsenglish.com, and search 488. It was called This is Actually the Most Dynamic Word in the English Language, which is very true, right? Actually is so dynamic. And we share
It's so
details in that
dynamic.
episode about the ways we use actually. Lots of
Okay.
detail that we use it to disagree, to emphasize changing our mind, to show surprise, to add more information, lots of
Ooh,
different ways. So definitely check that out for a deeper dive into actually.
okay, I love it. And then when do we use really? Do we use it sometimes, Aubrey, as an interjection to kind of
Mhm.
request confirmation? What does that look like?
Exactly. We use it alone, really, just like you said, as an interjection to either express skepticism. Maybe you're saying, like, we don't know if we believe what we
Right,
just
really?
heard, or to
Hmm.
request confirmation that we heard correctly. It has the
Okay.
same meaning as, is that true? Or are you serious?
Yes, and we definitely wouldn't use act. That would be very strange if you said actually,
Right.
right? We don't use it that way. I see how
And
you might make that
I have
mistake.
heard language
Mhm.
learners do that because they see
Really?
actually and really as a synonym. And so they would assume that you could either say really or actually. I have heard that and you're right. The native speakers don't do that. So if you're going to ask it to request clarification when you just mean are you serious? Are you telling the truth? Only
Right.
use really as that interjection.
I mean, for our very, very high level listeners, if you do want to use actually, you could say something like, oh, is that actually true? Or is that actually the
Mhm.
case? Right? That would make sense. But you can't put actually by itself in this context to request confirmation, right, Aubrey?
Yes, exactly. Good point. You could ask with a full sentence and have actually in there showing that you're surprised by what you're hearing, but we
Yeah,
don't use it on its own as an interjection. Interjection, exactly.
you
I thought
got
we'd
it.
do just a very mini role play
Okay.
here to show really as an interjection. So I'll
Okay.
start. Ready?
Yes.
I went to Hawaii last summer.
Really? Was it amazing?
Yes.
Oh
Right,
my gosh.
exactly. So you wouldn't use actually here, you're just using it to sort of say like, "Really?" I
Yes.
maybe you're a little surprised or maybe you want to find out, we just use it to sort of say like, "Are you serious? That's awesome."
Yeah, it's kind of in a way like a little bit of a filler, wouldn't you say, Aubrey, in this case? I'm
Yes.
putting a filler in there. It's a prompt for you to keep going, keep speaking, a follow-up question. It's a conversation facilitator in a way, right? Facilitates our connection, keeps us going. That's
Yes,
what
and
it's
it
doing.
definitely indicates someone's sort of style of speech. Sometimes you'll hear natives use this word a lot, like they say really all the time. I don't know if maybe for some people that's a pet peeve, someone saying really all the time.
I mean,
And
our
like you said,
listeners,
it usually doesn't really indicate that you don't believe them. It's usually used as filler.
filler or support. I guess I wanted to say support. It's supporting the speaker. It's saying, "Oh my gosh,
Mm.
you just told me something interesting," and I'm going to push back and say, "Really? Is that true?" Guys, you could go back into our episodes here on All Ears English and hear Michelle and I and Aubrey and I saying this all the time. I just said it. If you caught it, if you have the app, you'd see it in the transcripts. I said it naturally in the middle of our conversation here.
Oh yeah, we use
So
it
go back
all
and
the
try to find
time.
that.
Just like Alba said, you're going to hear really and actually. And then the trick is to understand that they're not always direct synonyms, depending on the intonation, depending on the context, has a little bit
Yes.
of a different meaning.
All right, so we're going to need lots of examples. You guys, after this episode, are going to go find your own examples, right, by consuming native content. But now we have a role play, right? So
Yes,
should we
let's do
do
this
that?
role play and then we'll point out all the different ways that we use it. So, we're going to talk about Lindsay, you are into cliff jumping, or I'm into cliff jumping in this
You're
role play,
probably
and
more
you're
into
asking
cliff
me about it.
jumping than me. Okay. All right. You said you might go cliff jumping this weekend. Did you end up doing that?
Actually, yes.
Really? What was it like?
It was really scary.
I have actually never even considered going. It seems way too dangerous.
It didn't really feel dangerous because so many people were doing it safely, but it was just frightening to be up so high.
Well, that's why I can't do it. I'm really afraid of heights.
I'm not actually, or at least no more than most people.
Oh
I
my gosh, I
crammed a
feel like I
bunch of
would
them in
get
there,
to
but it probably didn't even sound that abnormal to you because we use these words so often. You hear, and
yeah.
now that you guys are thinking about it, you're going to hear really and actually all the time, podcast,
Yeah.
TV, all the
And
time.
speaking of the content here, Aubrey, I feel like this would be a likely scenario that you would be more likely to go cliff jumping than me. I feel like you're kind of a daredevil. You do daredevil things. Am I right in
Maybe a
that?
little bit. I have gone
Yeah.
cliff jumping when I was
Okay.
younger. I went quite a bit. I haven't in a while. Have you ever
Okay.
been?
No, God, no. I don't think I could. I don't think I would. I'd get to the top and everyone else would be in the water. I'd be like, I can't, I'm walking down. I can't. I have a
Oh,
hard
it
time doing
depends.
things
For
like
me,
that.
I think it depends on how high and how safe I know it is, right? If I know there are no rocks below and I'm seeing lots of people jump and it's totally safe. I actually did go just a couple weeks ago now that I think about it. We were on the
Okay.
river and there's a place people were just jumping from a cliff. And I'm like, sure, I could do that.
Yep. So
I was thinking I hadn't done it for a while, but
yes.
actually did just a few weeks
I
ago.
knew it. I knew it. Which of us is more likely to do this? It
Right,
makes
you should have
total
said,
sense.
"Really?" I doubt that's true. You would have been right.
I love it. It's so good. So, guys, let's break this down. This is a great example of a lot of uses, like you said, of actually and really. So, the first thing we said was you said you might go cliff jumping. Did you end up doing it? And you said,
And I said, "Actually, yes, because I'm using that, I'm
what?
expressing surprise, right? I
Okay,
may be surprised, you might be surprised that actually, yes, I did go cliff jumping."
perfect. So, that's the surprise piece. And then looking for confirmation, I said, really? What was it like? So, you have really, and then you have a little bit of a follow up question, which is always great. Which is always
Yes,
great.
that's
Mhm.
true, right? Just really, like, you're usually going to say, "That's crazy, I can't believe you did that," or "What was it like?" Definitely.
Exactly. And then
And then
the
I
next piece,
said,
mhm,
it was really scary using that meaning of really that just means very. We mean the
traditional
same thing
adverb,
to
right?
say it was very scary, right? It was really
Yes.
scary.
Yeah. And then it gets more interesting, right? I have actually never even, this is the more interesting use of actually. I've
Hmm.
actually never even considered going. When you guys can start to use actually in this way, you're basically at 99% fluency, right? Um, which function am I using here? Am I using the
Yeah.
surprise
So
function?
I think to add more information, right? Say, I have
Mm,
actually never even considered going
yeah,
because this is interesting that not only have you not been cliff jumping, you've never even considered going, right? You're adding more interesting information. There's kind of overlap here a little bit, right? You're saying something that will likely surprise the other person,
exactly. So there's an overlap of the two different functions. There is the surprise because I might be surprised you might be surprised that I've never considered it,
right?
right? And it's a little extra information. What
Mhm.
else? What else? Let's see.
So then I
There,
said, it didn't really feel dangerous, right? So this is a little more nuanced use of really. It's not the
yes.
very, it does indicate a little bit of surprise, right? I'm saying you might be surprised to know that it wasn't really scary. That was the very. You
Yeah,
might
yeah.
be surprised to know that it wasn't scary. I would say it wasn't really scary.
Okay, I love it. So good. And then the last thing is I said, that's why I can't do it. I'm really afraid of heights. In this case, it's extremely, right?
Mhm. The very or extremely. Yes,
Right,
I'm really
right.
afraid of heights. Oh, and then one more at the end, I said, I'm not actually, which was again like, you might be surprised to know that I'm not afraid of heights. I'm not actually.
I love it. This is so good. The one thing I want to warn, I think that actually, and maybe really too, but more so actually, is one of those words that can become people can overuse them. Like it can be something you say too often. I mean, sometimes we get into these trends for our personal language choices where we're saying the same word over and over, whether it's in one conversation or one given month or week or whatever. So just be careful you're not overusing actually.
It's true.
What do
And
you think
we
about that?
probably don't even notice until a friend has the guts to tell us, like, oh, you're saying actually a lot.
Yeah, and I know it's happened to me, and then I'll think about how I sound. For other words, I've done that before. Maybe that's another episode where we get on a
Mm.
track where we find ourselves just the words just coming out of our mouth too much.
For sure. And I don't know
Um,
about you, but I love having that friend who would tell me, like kindly, but
for
let
sure.
me know. For a while, I was saying right too much. Like someone would say something, I'd be like, right? Like to
Oh yeah,
agree and add emphasis, but too much. And I had a friend
that's
that
a
was
great
like, you
example of
say
that.
that a lot.
Okay, that has to be an episode. That's a great
Good to
example
know.
of that. I love that. I love that. It's true. You want that friend who's going to tell you when you have a piece of food in your teeth and when you're saying too many
Or when you're saying a word
repetitive
way too
words.
much.
I love it. I love it.
But
This is so good. So,
kindly, right?
yeah,
In a
yeah.
kind way.
So that's a little bit of a bonus message for you guys. But what's our takeaway for our listeners today?
Yeah, just to be aware how much nuance there is in these words, really and actually. There's, depending on the context and the intonation, the meaning changes. So today's
Yeah.
explanation and these role plays clarify how natives use them. You'll definitely want to practice, right? And like you were saying, Lindsay, you want to pay attention while you're listening to content made for native speakers. Pay attention to how natives use these. What is the meaning?
No question, no question. And I would also, guys, if I were you, I would go back, listen to this episode again, go back to that other episode we recommended from All Ears English 488 and really dive deep into these two words because you're going to hear them a ton and you're going to start using them appropriately and properly. And it's going to get you to that 99% level of fluency, Aubrey. Good stuff.
Yes, so true. That's where you want to be, right? You want to be confident, comfortable using these very native words in the correct context with the right intonation. So, yes, it takes a little
Yes,
work, but you can get there.
you got it. Good stuff. All right, Aubrey, thanks for hanging out today. I'll see you very soon.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.